Kirby's Return to Dreamland casts a long shadow over the Kirby series. After a decade of no traditional Kirby platformers for home consoles, it was the great comeback of a franchise that seemed to struggle during the GameCube era. Whatever the developers tried, it didn't work out according to their expectations, and thus only the handheld titles kept the series alive. The success of Return to Dreamland should naturally define the future of the franchise for the next 10 years, with games like Triple Deluxe or Planet Robobot directly translating the promising formula to the 3DS. It appeared like Kirby has found his modern identity, and after the Switch got announced, it was only a matter of time until we could enjoy the first proper HD title. But much to our surprise, this title should come sooner than we expected, and just 2 years after Planet Robobot released, Star Allies saw the light of upcoming Cloudy Days. Critiques as well as fans deprecated the newest game as a lazy follow-up to what we have already seen many years ago, and additionally, free content updates could not hide the fact that this game wasn't complete at launch. The playtime was short, the difficulty too easy, and the overall gameplay too safe. The picture of a once great return showed slowly but surely its effect of decline. Even after the game was completed and added substantial modes and characters, the damage was already done, and the finished Star Allies could not truly change the initial first impressions. Not every game can live up to the standards of its predecessors, but what makes this whole case more tragic, especially in regards of the Forgotten Land, is how Star Allies was supposed to be the final chapter of the Return to Dreamland saga. All the characters and callbacks to past games let Star Allies appear like the ultimate celebration of the franchise, which makes its reputation all the more disappointing. After all, you normally want to end on a high note, but was the short playtime and low difficulty the real reason for the lukewarm reception? Sometimes the flaws of a game go much deeper, and after Star Allies initially released, I was extremely surprised to see how no one was really talking about the true flaw the game was suffering from. It's not about the challenge or length, and often people do not internalize what is really bothering them in a game, which is why I'm going to show you the true reason why Star Allies failed to impress. First, let's go over the common complaints most people describe. Normally, Kirby games tend to be extremely beginner-friendly because the developers assume that even a toddler should be able to beat it. What carries this philosophy too far is the returning helper mechanic from Kirby Superstar, where you can create different supporters in the form of regular enemies. Initially, this feature seemed promising. Not only did we get multiple playable characters aside from Kirby, but it was also a great opportunity to add an extensive multiplayer akin to Return to Dreamland. One thing that is different, however, are the partners and their urge to help. You can basically just stand in one corner during a boss fight and wait until all the friends deal with the boss alone. This wouldn't be much of a problem if there was a toggle in the options to adjust the activity of your allies, just like in Bowser's Fury, for example. With a system like that, you could basically set the difficulty for your own taste, but sadly, due to partners being a little too helpful, Star Allies is easier than most Kirby games already are. Nonetheless, if you're not looking for a super challenging adventure, this flaw is at least acceptable. To play Zero's 2 advocate, you can still just use only one partner like in Superstar, and whenever you need more, the game makes sure to provide them. So while I understand the point of being bored because of a lack of basic challenge, it's still not the main reason for Star Allies being flawed. The next thing many people will be fast to mention is the short playtime. Of course, it can be frustrating to pay full price for a game that can be played through in 2 days. But you have to remember that it's not the developers who decide the pricing of the game. If a company like hell wants to make Star Allies a short adventure, reminiscent of the first Kirby's Dream Land, which they officially confirmed, it's not their fault for Nintendo publishing the game like this. Naturally, you can question a statement like this, especially if they release an HD title just after 2 years, but still, short games have their reason to exist as well. Not everyone has the time to spend countless hours in a big experience, so having a more comfy game to relax and maybe revisiting it from time to time is something young people in particular are not really aware of. For example, whenever I feel like playing a modern Kirby game again, I often tend to lean towards Star Allies because when you're not aiming for the 100%, it's very feasible to beat this game in just 1 or 2 days. And replayability is the right term to describe Star Allies as a whole. If you're not familiar with the game, Star Allies basically starts to unfold its true potential after finishing the main adventure. Here you get access to a couple of modes, like Guest Star for instance. During the primary campaign, it's not possible to play as one of the allies in a traditional way. If you're doing single player, and the Guest Star mode lets you do that while changing some minor elements, like boosting items and specific moments. It's nothing breathtaking, but if you're motivated enough to get the sweet crown for every character, this mode alone will deal with your time for 1 year at least. After that, you're able to try the classic arena, where you have the chance to finally get a real challenge and test your skills in a boss rush. As one final surprise, the developers added Heroes from Another Dimension, a separate adventure built with challenges around copy abilities and dream friends in mind. Often you hear people talk about how the whole game should have been designed with this attention to detail, and it's a shame to see how many players just stopped playing after the release. Kirby Star Allies is basically another Kirby Superstar, so to speak, because it's not only about one mode that should define the merits of the game, but the entire package from the beginning to the end, which includes all the post-game modes. Even with all these updates and improvements, Star Allies is still regarded as a weak representative, even among people who completed it to its fully extent. And the reason for that is not mainly the length or difficulty, but the very basic foundation of the genre, the level design. What makes good level design? Of course, this question is way too complex to answer it in a video like that, but basically there is an easy way to portray the very basics. Imagine a level consists of a straight line without any real obstacles to jump over. Now imagine the same level but with some small hills. In the first example you do nothing but run, and it becomes quite monotonous after some while. The second instance, however, requires you to do multiple actions and makes use of the movement options of the protagonist. Expand this thought process and add some decision making into your level, where players have to decide if they want to take the safe route or risk a game over in order to get an item. It's all about making the player do more than one action consistently, which is why prime examples of the genre often implement one new main idea for each level. When comparing Star Allies to other titles in the series, especially Triple Deluxe or Planet Robobot, you can see a significant drop in quality in terms of how creative or exciting a level is designed. One reason are the missing background elements, which were added to the 3DS games as a means to emphasize the 3D effect. I understand that it's probably difficult to implement such a feature in a multiplayer experience, but because of the overall slower gameplay and sometimes puzzle-focused sections, it would not have been impossible to play with the background again. Even if we leave this idea behind, the basic level design is just uneventful. It starts strong with different ideas, playing with copy abilities and the feature to mix them with elementary powers, but as the adventure goes on, you can see a clear emphasis on simple moving blocks. Be it World 1, 2 or 3, everything is built on a very basic level, and it sometimes feels like you could easily recreate this kind of design in a simple editor like Game Builder Garage. If it's not moving blocks, then you're most likely going to either collect keys or fight a couple of enemies / mini-bosses to proceed. There's never really a point where the level design takes advantages of the settings besides falling fire rocks, which are again moving blocks or leaves hiding stuff. What's even more baffling is how Return to Dreamland is fundamentally the mirror of Star Allies, as this game features no backgrounds and a multiplayer for 4 people as well. Unlike in Star Allies, the general level design feels like it can be enjoyed by just one player and is not spread out. On top of that, multiple special items provide variety apart from the copy abilities, and each world holds at least some sort of identity by introducing elements which are specifically made for this respective setting. A pile of leaves or water that needs to be frozen reappears in Star Allies throughout the game, and it's not even like these ideas escalate in a creative way. The only big unique feature are all the friend forms, which become even better in the post-game. Another special trait trait that should have been explored more extensively is World 3 and the general structure of the game. Unlike in other titles, Star Allies follows a rather unconventional way of progression and doesn't focus on the traditional style of 2D platformers with having worlds, which are relegated to a specific theme. Even boss fights can appear just randomly in the midst of the world, which admittedly is probably due to the short length, but still a welcoming change of pace. This doesn't mean there's no logical theming though, as World 2, for example, sees Kirby and his allies traveling through the whole planet and therefore visiting all sorts of different places. In contrast, the third world is solely about the enemy's bastion, so in the end, Star Allies' course of action feels less gamey and more like a connected adventure. Nonetheless, this concept is only scratching the surface, as there is not necessarily an obvious connection throughout World 3. Yes, the level look the same, but the actual set pieces are not distinct enough to make use of this special structure. For instance, the boss levels could have been themed more around the respective magical sisters, and the only time where something truly unexpected happens is the escape sequence at the end. Once again, if the developers would have made more use of this adventurous style of progression in combination with a more thrilling, connected level design, Star Allies may have been received differently despite the short length. In fact, the game features more level than Triple Deluxe or Planet Robobot, despite having only 4 major chapters. But another factor to count in is how people were expecting a little more from the first proper HD title. It's also not the case where there are different level designers for this game in comparison to Triple Deluxe, for example, as Yuki Endo still holds the role as a director for this position. Ultimately, everyone may focus their reasons for disliking a game in another way, but I still believe the general consensus would have been different if the level design would hold the same standard both 3DS titles set. Shortcomings are much more forgiven if the actual core of the game is exceptionally good, which is why most Kirby games are received quite well in spite of sharing rather similar debatable traits. All these interesting ideas are nothing if there is not a solid foundation to build upon.